welcome to another episode of the TeleWellness Hub podcast. I'm Martha Hamilton, your host. Today, I'm speaking with Ana Marcela Rodriguez from Therapy Works Counseling. Ana was born and raised in Monterrey, Mexico, where she studied a degree in psychology, and she graduated from honors, being in the highest 1% of her generation. She gives therapy in Mexico. She gave therapy to teenagers, adults, and couples in a community center. She also gave workshops on how to help couples on how to have a satisfying relationship. Later, she went to live in the United States, and her passion as a therapist is the desire to continue providing therapy and helping her community. She studied a master's in science of counseling at SMU. She graduated with a 4.0. She's been on national television. She's done trainings to colleagues about the importance of mental health in the Hispanic community. Welcome, Ana Marcela.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I live in a border town. I live in El Paso, Texas. So we have a very predominantly Hispanic community here. And prior to living here, I've also lived in Miami. And so I think the importance of addressing mental health in the Hispanic community was really emphasized in areas that I've lived, but I know that not everybody lives maybe in a community where that is a conversation that is had, or maybe there might not have a lot of options, or maybe people might be new to kind of looking at the differences perhaps and the cultural sensitivity that may play a role in therapy. So I'm very grateful that you're here and that we'll get to have this conversation. And before we kind of talk more about that, my first question is, why do you do the wellness work that you do?
Well, it's my passion to serve my community. I think the reason behind it is a very personal one. When I came to the U.S., I struggled myself to find a therapist that spoke my language, that knew my culture, the one that I can have that connection and click. So I had already previously studied in Mexico and had my degree, but I knew that if I wanted to practice in here, I had to pursue another master's degree and take the exam for the licensure and all of that. So with that need that I saw that I have, I knew other people were looking for a therapist the same way that I was. So I was like, okay, I think there's niche in here and there's a need, and I should do everything that it's in my power to fulfill that. And that's how Therapy Works was born almost 7 years ago.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Yeah, I could tell by just in researching and preparing for this. You looked at your website and just the form when we were scheduling this. I mean, your passion really shines through. You can tell there's passion. That's why I love asking people, why do you do the wellness work you do? Because there's the curriculum and the training and the education, but I love getting to the heart of it. And clearly you've lived it. You've seen the needs. You've experienced looking for your own therapist, just like what you described, as you've experienced it firsthand, what that process is like.
Exactly. And having a therapist that speaks your language and that it's from a country that is like yours or yours, it makes the difference. And I think I know that's our mission and that's what we're doing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're trying to first destigmatize mental health in our community, because that's another big thing.
Yes.
For us Latinos and Hispanics, it's difficult to ask for help. It's difficult to have access to mental health. So that's another of our, and then to reach out to our community. And when we have had a lot of acceptance from them, and that makes my heart really full. I feel very successful in a sense that we are helping our people.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a really wonderful mission to drive the work that you do. You know, you mentioned the Hispanic community, just being really aware, first speaking the language and So not being just bilingual, but bicultural, understanding another country's customs or culture. What are some common mental health issues that you see affect the Hispanic community?
I think one of the biggest issue that we encounter is immigration. So the immigration status of people will limit them reaching out for help. And also knowing their immigration story, how they came to the US, why they are here. That's another important issue that we see very frequently. The cultural clashes in generations, first generation parents that are not from here. And then what we have been seeing lately, that I know it's not just in our culture, but other cultures as well. Depression and anxiety have been in the rise since COVID. So are all very important issues. And we also have, couples issues, bicultural couples and the language barriers, cultural barriers that they encountered with them.
Yeah, no, that's a lot to take into consideration. And I saw that you're a group. So you do immigration evaluations. You have other therapists that can address these needs. Do you work with adults or do you also see teens and children?
So I have Therapy Works is a group practice, and we are right now 25 clinicians. We are all bilingual and all Hispanic. That's our commonality, but we are very different in our in our areas of expertise, trainings. So we have clinicians that attend the needs of children and of teenagers, of adults, of couples, of families. And then we also provide the service of psychological evaluations for immigration. Myself, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So my focus personally is to work a lot with couples and individuals. I work a lot with trauma. I'm EMDR trained as well. So my primary focus is that one. But in our practice, we see all the family.
Oh, yeah. No, that's wonderful to be able to go to one place and find someone to help. I actually have not interviewed anybody that talks about EMDR as EMDR trained yet. So I'm curious if you could kind of share a little bit about what EMDR is and what it can help with. I myself am not EMDR certified, so I just would love to just learn and share with other listeners. Yes.
Of course. So EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing, and it's a technique that is well known and researched for that is used for trauma. And it is used for any type of trauma, not just big traumas like sexual abuse or violence or some big traumas, recent or past, but it is also used for other type of traumas like beliefs that we have that are not healthy or that are dysfunctional or unhealthy. In a nutshell, that is EMDR. And by bilateral stimulation, we connect memories with emotions, and the targeting of these is to desensitize intense emotions of those traumas. So we don't have the ability to erase a trauma. We do not have that ability, but we do have the ability to minimize the intensity of the emotions that are aroused within.
And I've heard from colleagues that you can do this with even babies. I mean, it's non-invasive. You don't even necessarily have to speak. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard from colleagues, even a baby can start doing EMDR, right?
Yeah, I know about babies.
Okay.
And I have done that with babies. But I know you can do it with very young children and absolutely with teenagers and adults. And they do not need even to remember exactly the trauma.
Okay.
There's not a need of that. And they do not need to relive it or even like talk deeply about it.
Okay.
So that's the amazing thing about EMDR. It does things that talk therapy has its limitation. A lot of
Right.
people are not the area of the language is not very developed, or they're
Mm-hmm.
very concrete thinkers. So
Mm-hmm.
they do not have that ability. So EMDR is very useful also for those type of people.
And, when we're talking a little bit about language, how can language barriers, have you seen, affect mental health treatment for Hispanic individuals? I know, kind of switching away from EMDR. Well, you mentioned EMDR and I was just fascinated, but specifically with the language barriers, how do you see that it affects the mental health treatment for Hispanic individuals? And what can be done to address this?
Well, our emotions are saved in our native language, and we can express ourselves more in our native language. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important to find a therapist that speaks your language. So you don't need to spend time in translating or thinking on how this word or what does this word means in English or other languages. That's why it's very, very crucial for the treatment that you find a clinician that understands you.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I'm realizing as we're doing this, like we might need to do have you back on and we'll redo this in Spanish. I'm thinking so people can hear you and not have to, what you're saying is, what is this word I'm thinking of? Like having to that step, that process, it is work. And if you're doing work in therapy, like the work to translate isn't an added
Exactly.
barrier. Yes.
It totally is an added barrier to people to have played. And more so, when you're in therapy, you go deep, and we
Mm-hmm.
try a lot of times to not be so cognitive, right? Not to be in our
Mm-hmm.
prefrontal cortex feel. So we cannot do both things, like go deep and then at the same time start translating. And that's a lot of work on the client, and the progress will be much more slower.
I love that you said that, our emotions are stored in our dominant language, and, having to translate is difficult. And that's why it's so important to find someone that you can speak your language in when it comes to the hard work in therapy. And prior to that, you talked a little bit about stigmas as well. Are there any stigmas surrounding mental health in the Hispanic community that you typically see? And how do you address those? And as a society, what can we do to address that?
I think we do have several stigmas. I mean, for once, going to therapy is a huge one. We usually have a saying of like the dirty laundry. You do not air your dirty
Oh,
laundry to the people, right? We try to fix things within our family system. So going
yes.
to someone that you do not know and talking about your relationships and your problems is something that it's a big stigma. So trying to get rid of that idea, of that belief, it is tough for a lot of people. So gaining the trust of our clients, it is crucial
Mm-hmm.
for this process of getting the trust of the community. I think another stigma is we are, as a culture, very religious culture, very aligned with
Mm-hmm.
the Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
So going to a therapy sometimes might feel that you're not believing in God enough, or you're not
Mm.
enough. And having these conversations about the importance of mental health with church leaders like priests or pastors has been also a way to get to the people. And I think nowadays they are much more open, and they see the need of mental health, not as something that is opposite or that is fighting against religion, but that together we can get people to a better place. The well-being of an individual has to do with the mental health and also spirituality.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. In one of the episodes, I talked about what is wellness, and the Global Institute describes it, or it's actually the definition is the quality or state of being in good health, especially as an actively sought goal. But the Global Wellness Institute also talks about how it's multidimensional, including physical, mental, but also spiritual. And absolutely what you're describing it makes perfect sense. And so you actively reach out, it sounds like, to churches also. I know you've done trainings and different things like that, but it sounds like really addressing it within churches.
Yes, of course. We are very active in a lot of churches. We do a lot of talks, workshops. And just this Sunday, I was in Corsicana in a very big church giving a workshop to couples about communication and conflict resolutions. And we have a lot of priests and a lot of pastors and other church leaders that refer clients now to us. And we love to have that relationship because if it comes from them, people are more trusting of their advice.
Yes. And taking away some of that stigma, like you mentioned. I know there's a lot of research on that, right? Religiosity and trust in faith, and how wonderful that you can find a way to acknowledge and honor people's faith and use it in combination with therapy techniques that you're utilizing and for the well-being of individuals and families and couples.
Exactly. Yes. And I think we're doing a lot of that work to try to destigmatize mental health and that people care about their mental health the same way that they do about their physical health. That's our one of our purpose. I think going back to your question of other stigmas that we have as a community is not believing that mental health disorders are actually real and that they, right? And sometimes we have parents that will say, like, no, that's not depression or that's not anxiety. They're just making this up, or even with themselves, not only with their children, but not acknowledging and being aware that these are disorders. It has been also challenging in our community, with our community.
Yes, I could definitely think of times in my past had a group practice. I've been in private practice, and definitely can see how awareness or acknowledgement plays a big role within that, the stigma. And you mentioned the children, especially at first generation, there are just so many cultural differences, right? Also in terms of just a different life, different culture, different perspective, and that stigma of acknowledging that a mental health disorder is biologically based, just the same way diabetes is, just the same way asthma is, right? You can't think yourself to get over it, right? Like ponte las pilas, like just get some energy and like get out there. You can't. Yes. So I think you bring up a very important thing to consider when it comes to serving the Hispanic community and acknowledging and addressing that stigma.
Yeah. And I think these people are more open. So we're very grateful and grateful for that openness to receive the information and do something with it. And hopefully that they reach out when they need it and go to therapy.
Yes, because it takes a lot of bravery and courage to do something new like therapy. If that's something that wasn't something that was discussed or something that felt that you would ever consider, right? So I think that's so nice that there's this openness that you foster and facilitate. What steps can individuals take to prioritize their mental health and well-being in their daily lives? What would you recommend, especially for the Hispanic community?
I will say to reach out. There are people in our community that can provide the guidance, the help, that can tell you where the resources are.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest mistakes that we usually do is to keep it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That we are alone in knowing that there's a lot of people that might be experiencing the same symptoms that we do, or the symptoms that we do, and that there's help out there. I think having that hope that things can change, that we can heal, that we can have a better and brighter present and future. It's the message that I want to give to our community and to everyone that is open to listen.
Absolutely. And when it comes to some of those resources, I mean, just in this conversation, I feel like our first 20 minutes, we know that there's talk therapy, but there's also techniques like EMDR. Someone might reach out to a church that will direct them to the right therapist. I mean, it just seems like being open and speaking could lead to the resources. What are some of the resources that you think, I know we talked about some of them that are available for individuals within the Hispanic community, especially, that you would recommend that they search for those who are seeking mental health support?
So in all of the churches, or in a lot of the churches, we know that there are groups and that they have ministries that can help them with what they're going through or direct them to the right people. Schools also have a lot of resources.
Oh, right.
And even if they cannot provide it, they will refer them to good resource. I think it is important to do not give up. You will find the right help for you, and that might not be the same right help for your comadre or friend, but you will find it. Just don't give up on that search. I mean, we are a resource too. And if we cannot help you, we will give you referrals of other people in the community, other groups, other churches, other nonprofits. There's a lot of nonprofits that also have bilingual clinicians or bilingual help that can provide that service for you.
That's wonderful. And Ana Marcela, for people who want to connect with you directly, where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
We have our webpage, therapyworkscounseling.com, and we are very active in our social media too, in Instagram at therapyworksana, and in Facebook, TherapyWorks Counseling. If you browse it in any browser and put TherapyWorks Counseling, our information will pop up. You can shoot us an email at hola@therapyworkscounseling.com. Our phone number is 972-695-3421. If you also put my name in there, Ana Marcela Rodriguez, I think my face will pop there and it will give you the information. Reach out, email us. And as I said, if we are not the right fit for you, we know people in the community. We know organizations, agencies that we can connect you to.
That's wonderful. And you serve individuals, you mentioned the Dallas area. Do you also work with individuals remotely in all of Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have 6 locations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but we also serve via telehealth to all Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Michigan.
Since wow.
We have several clinicians that are licensed in several states, so we are able to do that. The same thing with psychological evaluations for immigration. We can provide these via telehealth to all of these states. All of us are bilingual. Some of us are like me, that my native language is Spanish and I have a thick accent, but we have other clinicians that are completely bilingual, that are first generations. Their English is perfect and their Spanish is perfect as well. So we try to be very diverse, because the Hispanic community and the Latin community is diverse.
Yes.
That's Mexico, right? So we have clinicians from a lot of different countries of Latin America.
That's so wonderful because I think that is important to address too. There's diversity within communities, right? So I really think it's wonderful that you have such a wide range of offerings in your clinicians, and the languages and the cultures in the States. So I'll definitely make sure to include in the show notes those links so that people can connect with you and connect and reach out. For those who are setting goals for wellness, or maybe they're working on actively reaching their goals, what words of encouragement do you have for them?
Set realistic goals.
Mm-hmm.
Measure them. Have a way to measure those goals, a time frame to do it. Step by step, go step by step. If you are not able to reach that goal, then reframe that goal. Maybe that goal is not for you right now. It could be for later in your life, and that's okay. And it helps a lot if you have a friend or someone that you can rely on to reach that goals, for accountability, for support, and do not give up.
Love that. Very encouraging. Ana Marcela, thank you so much for being a part of our wellness journey. And make sure to those listening, if you want to reach out or you have questions or curious, to check out the show notes to connect with Ana Marcela and her team.